Time for the press review for you now on the programme. It's a growing rift between Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu. Erin is looking at what the papers are saying about it, Erin.
That's right. Well, as the New York Times reports, Joe Biden told Israeli leaders Tuesday that they are now losing international support for the war in Gaza, which the Times described as among his most critical remarks to date of Netanyahu's handling of the crisis. The paper noting that Biden's public messaging since the October 7th attack has essentially evolved a bit. He went from offering unconditional support to Israel to now, saying that Israel should do more to avoid civilian casualties. The piece does point out that until now, he's largely left that task to other American officials, notably Vice President Kamala Harris. So Tuesday's comments were kind of his first direct acknowledgement of the condemnation by other world leaders, in any case, of Israel's wartime behavior. The Wall Street Journal focuses on one of the main sticking points between Netanyahu and Biden, and that is who should govern Gaza after the war. The Israeli prime minister confirming that he would reject the Biden administration's post-war plan to have the Palestinian Authority take over Gaza. But the piece does point out that that's not likely to be set in stone until the elections are decided in Israel next year and whether or not Benjamin Netanyahu is reelected.
Within Israel, though, Netanyahu's government is facing little resistance, this even from the judicial branch, Erin.
That's right, Stuart. I'm going to try and pull it up for you. There we go. It's a piece from 972 magazine, which lays out how Israel's Supreme Court has been, quote, totally subservient to the government's policies since the October 7th attack. This piece reports that it repeatedly refused to block serious violations of citizens' rights. Now, this includes refusing to provide information on Palestinian detainees to civil rights groups, allowing the government to essentially ban pro-Palestinian speech, and also upholding a police ban on demonstrations in some Arab Israeli cities. This piece arguing then that the court is increasingly giving more weight to national security considerations and over protecting civil rights. All of this, of course, coming after a year of battles over the government's controversial judicial reforms, which, of course, are seemingly no longer the main priority on a domestic level.
Let's look at something completely different now from Erin. She's been looking at how journalists in Africa are resisting oppressive regimes.
Yeah, this is from the Francophone magazine Jeune Afrique, which argues that from the Sahel to the Maghreb, all the way to Central Africa, journalists, or forced censorship, rather, in the name of patriotic coverage, is what's dominating press outlets in this region. This special edition then takes a look at several journalists across the continent who are braving the government and its pressure, its threats as well, sometimes to their lives. Now, this includes journalists like the Nigerian reporter and human rights activist Samira Sabu. It also includes people like Anas Aramiyawa Anas from Ghana, who infiltrated the government circles to denounce corruption. In total, there's about 6 different journalists who are profiled. I would encourage our French-speaking readers to take a look at that.
Even in Europe, though, journalists are facing increasingly difficult conditions, and there's an investigative report you found on that as well.
Yeah, the outlet Disclose took a look at numerous countries' attempts to undermine what could be the first European law on protecting the freedom of an independent media across the continent. Now, debates on this text are largely centered on the Article 4, which prevents the use of spy software against journalists. And this is, of course, in the name of protecting their sources. And there's only one exception to that. That's in cases of grave forms of criminality, mostly things like terrorism. But Discord had access to documents showing that France, with support from officials in Finland, Greece, Cyprus, and Malta, wants to include another exception, which would allow for the surveillance of journalists in the name of national security, which, of course, have many fearing that would endanger not only their freedom to report what they want to report on, but also to protect the sources that they can be, that are often the source of the sensitive information.
And Erin's going to finish for us with a story suggesting that apparently you don't actually need a passport to travel internationally. Really?
This is a bizarre story, Stuart. It was the case, at least for a dual Russian-Israeli citizen. That's Sergei Vladimirovich Ochigava, who flew from Denmark all the way to the United States without a passport or even a ticket for that flight. Now, this is from the Washington Post. He actually wasn't even on the passenger list and still made little efforts to hide his presence on that 12-hour-long flight. He apparently changed sheets multiple times. He requested multiple meals at every meal service. He attempted to strike up conversations with multiple passengers throughout the duration of the flight, even ate the chocolate of one of the flight attendants. The most bizarre thing is that he says he doesn't remember how any of this happened. He doesn't know how he got through security without a ticket. He also claims that he left his passport on the plane. Of course, that passport was never found. He has now pleaded not guilty to violating U.S. laws and will stand trial in December. But of course, a lot of questions, especially in terms of security, about how this man traveled.
There's the security questions and the questions about how he says he doesn't remember. All very, very strange. Very bizarre from Erin there in the press review.